Good afternoon. This is the party line for January 28th, 2011, 7 days since Keith Olbermann has been on television. I'm Greg Levine, and I'm the managing editor of Firedog Lake, and I'm bored. I'm bored with the Obama administration. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that I long for the rip-roaring exciting days of George W. Bush, and I don't want to seem petty, but honestly, climb with me into the Wayback Machine. Let's go all the way back to Tuesday during the State of the Union and think about that speech and think about just how juiced you are for the next year or the next 2 years. Not very, at least not if you're me. I listened to that speech. I tweeted about that speech. I read a lot of stuff about that speech, and I barely remember that speech, not without looking at the transcript. We have some catchphrases, we have some bad jokes, but we don't have a lot to get excited about. Answer me this. What in Tuesday's speech got you really excited about the next 2 years? Was it meaningful climate change legislation? Maybe a proposal for comprehensive immigration reform or a way out of Afghanistan? How about gun control? Or maybe just ammunition control? Or maybe it was that thing that got a lot of progressive pundits excited, which was the end of subsidies to big oil. Well, most of those subsidies come in the form of tax breaks, and tax law gets written in Congress, and half of Congress right now is controlled by Republicans, and the Energy and Commerce Committee, specifically, is controlled by Republican Joe Barton of Texas, the man who apologized to BP. So while I like a good dance performance as much as the next guy, that's not going to be the same as governing. That's not governing, that's not exciting, and most importantly, that's not germane to the people who are struggling in the here and now. Mythical job growth in the future is inspirational, but help right now is important. And while there were 25 references to jobs in the State of the Union, there were no references to unemployment. I'm talking about the right now 9.4% unemployment. The people needed to hear something about what was going to be done for them today. Not in America's great future that perhaps we will or will not win, but today. There were no concrete references to programs to help those people. No extensions of unemployment for the 99ers, the people whose benefits have run out. No references to the mortgage crisis and ways to help people who are facing foreclosure. No aid to state governments, which are cutting services left and right because their budgets are so strapped. No, there were no concrete references to the economic woes of the here and now. I'll tell you what there were concrete references to. There were concrete references to lowering the corporate tax rate, for instance. There were concrete references to the scourge of government overregulation, the talk of the salmon, the bad joke that seemed like somehow a cross between Proxmire's Golden Fleece Awards and a George Carlin routine, like, why do they drive on the parkway and park on the driveway, and why are salmon regulated by 2 agencies? As it turns out, that wasn't even a good example. Salmon is actually regulated pretty well by the federal government. But that's really neither here nor there. The message was very clear in this speech. The message was that corporations get concrete responses to their concerns, whereas the jobless or the near jobless or the economically strapped get the promises of some great future. That's the message that doesn't get me very excited about the next 2 years. Since the November election, Keith Olbermann had taken to ending his show by asking the new Republican majority, Mr. Boehner, where are the jobs? Well, Keith's not here anymore, so I'm going to have to ask the question, but I got to ask it my way. Mr. President, where are the jobs? Because come next year's State of the Union, if unemployment is still 9.4%, I'm still going to be bored. And come the election of 2012, if unemployment is still anywhere near that, a lot of people are going to be very disenchanted. And that's no way to win the future. Coming up this weekend on Firedog Lake, we have 2 great book salons. On Saturday at 5 p.m., economist Dean Baker is going to be talking with Michael Hudson about his book, The Monster, how a gang of predatory lenders and Wall Street bankers fleeced America and spawned a global crisis. And on Sunday, also at 5, we're going to have Julian Zelizer and his book, The Presidency of George W. Bush, A First Historical Assessment. He'll be chatting with Matthew Lassiter. I'm looking forward to those. I hope you can make it then. That's been the party line for this week. I'll see you next week. Thanks.